Beirut, Lebanon. In the softly lit conference hall of the Arab National Conference, an air of solemn expectation filled the room. Delegates from across the region sat in silence, their faces illuminated by the glow of a large screen. On it appeared the image of Khalil al-Hayya, a senior Hamas negotiator and one of the movement's most recognized political figures. Speaking via video link from an undisclosed location, his tone was deliberate, his words charged with a mix of defiance and purpose. Al-Hayya began by addressing the audience with what he called a clarification of historical truth. His statement cut sharply through the quiet. The Al-Aqsa flood was a response to every act of aggression and to the marginalization of the Palestinian cause and the attempts to erase it and impose a new reality, even to build a new Middle East. His expression was unflinching as he continued. Then came October 7 to affirm, without the rights of the Palestinian people, there will be no security and no stability. Without the establishment of a Palestinian state, without the return of Palestinian refugees, and without the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, the region will not calm down. His remarks, translated from Arabic and broadcast across the room, drew murmurs from delegates representing several Arab states and civil society organizations. The statement framed the October 7 attacks not as an isolated military action, but as a symbolic rupture, a declaration that the Palestinian issue, in Hamas's view, could not be sidelined or traded away in diplomatic frameworks that ignored decades of occupation, blockade and displacement. Since that day, the international discourse around the Gaza conflict has been marked by deep divisions. To some, October 7 was a brutal act of terror that shattered fragile prospects for peace. To others, it was, as al-Hayya argued, the inevitable outcome of prolonged despair and perceived betrayal. His language was chosen to evoke both continuity and consequence, that what erupted on October 7 was, in his words, a response to erasure. The Arab National Conference, a gathering of pan-Arab intellectuals and political figures, had convened in Beirut to debate the future of the Palestinian cause amid shifting alliances in the Middle East. The timing of al-Hayya's address was deliberate. It came as new negotiations, mediated by Washington, Cairo and Doha, attempted to solidify a tenuous truce in Gaza. That agreement, brokered on October 10, was supposed to bring an end to open hostilities and pave the way for humanitarian access. But the truce is held only in fragments. In the weeks since, both sides have accused the other of violations. Israel claims that Hamas has failed to return the remains of several hostages believed to have been killed in the early hours of the October 7 assault. Hamas, in turn, has accused Israel of launching covert strikes under the cover of the ceasefire. The Gaza skyline, still scarred by bombardments, testifies to the fragility of that peace. For the people on the ground, the distinction between war and truce has often blurred into one long, relentless cycle. From the podium, a Lebanese moderator reminded the audience that the conflict's aftermath has unfolded not just militarily, but politically and emotionally across the region. The Arab world, he said, is being tested again between its conscience and its silence. Al-Hayya, still visible on the conference screen, nodded faintly before resuming his remarks. October 7 erased the false narrative, he declared firmly. October 7 redrew the true narrative which awakened humanity. People across the world, the unshackled, rallied around our cause and our people, condemning the crimes, arrogance, and brutality of the occupation. His phrasing was intentional, the unshackled, an appeal to movements and individuals beyond the Arab world who have taken to the streets in protest against Israeli actions. In cities from London to Jakarta, from Cape Town to Sao Paulo, the Gaza war has become a global rallying point. Demonstrators wave Palestinian flags and chant slogans calling for justice, while Western governments navigate the fine line between supporting Israel's security and acknowledging mounting civilian casualties. As al-Hayya's speech echoed across the conference hall, the camera panned over the audience. Scholars, activists and former ministers, many of whom have lived through decades of Middle Eastern conflict. They listened closely, some nodding in agreement, others taking notes for the next day's policy sessions. Outside the hall, Beirut streets thrummed with life, but beneath the surface lingered the familiar anxiety of a city that has seen too many wars. In Washington, US, officials have described the situation as volatile but contained. The Biden administration's special envoy for the Middle East, in a recent briefing, said that the October 10 deal remains the only framework preventing a regional escalation. Yet, Israeli airstrikes in the southern Gaza region, reportedly in response to mortar fire, have cast doubt on whether the truce is holding in spirit or merely in name. Each side continues to accuse the other of bad faith. For analysts, al-Hayya's remarks carry both symbolic and strategic weight. They mark a deliberate effort by Hamas to reassert itself not only as a militant force, but as a political voice within the Arab discourse. His framing, invoking self-determination, refugees, and sovereignty, sought to place Hamas's struggle within the broader tapestry of anti-colonial resistance. But to many governments, especially those aligned with the Abraham Accords, this rhetoric risks reigniting tensions that had begun to cool under new diplomatic realities. Observers note that while Hamas speaks of reclaiming the Palestinian narrative, the toll on Gaza's population remains immense. The enclave's hospitals, still operating under severe shortages, struggle to treat the wounded. Power outages are routine, and international agencies warn of a humanitarian collapse if aid convoys continue to face delays. Inside Israel, families of those killed or captured on October 7 are demanding accountability not just from Hamas, but from their own government, which many accuse of unpreparedness and mismanagement. The juxtaposition of these narratives, one of resistance, the other of victimhood, defines the ongoing crisis. In this environment, al-Hayya's speech functions as both defiance and declaration, a message to Arab leaders who have normalized ties with Israel, and to Western capitals that continue to frame the conflict through a counterterrorism lens. Back in the Beirut conference hall, the applause was subdued but sustained. The tone was not celebratory, it was reflective. Delegates exchanged glances as if to acknowledge that the issues raised sovereignty, dignity, displacement are older than any ceasefire or summit. Outside, posters of Palestinian flags fluttered on lampposts, blending into Beirut's skyline of contradictions, resilience and ruin, hope and fatigue. Journalistically, what made this moment notable was its timing. Coming nearly a month after the attacks, al-Hayya's speech was less a justification than an ideological reaffirmation. It was a reminder that for Hamas, October 7 was meant to reset the narrative, to force the world to confront the question of Palestine anew. Whether that strategy succeeds or isolates the movement further remains uncertain. International responses to his remarks have been cautious. The European Union called for restraint, reiterating support for a two-state solution, but condemning all acts of terror. The United Nations, through its special coordinator for the Middle East peace process, described the rhetoric as deeply unhelpful at a time when civilians are suffering. Meanwhile, within Arab capitals like Cairo and Amman, officials have been careful to balance solidarity with pragmatism, wary of being drawn into a renewed regional escalation. In Beirut, al-Hayya's closing words sought to connect the struggle in Gaza with a broader human condition. The cause of Palestine, he said, is not only ours, it is the cause of every free person who rejects occupation and injustice. The hall responded with a quiet standing ovation, not loud, but deliberate. For many present, it was not agreement with tactics, but acknowledgement of a truth that continues to haunt the region, that the Palestinian question, unresolved and raw, remains the moral fault line of Middle Eastern politics. As the conference ended, the camera lingered on the screen, displaying al-Hayya's face before fading to the Palestinian flag. The voiceover transitions into a closing narration, reflecting on what the day's dialogue represents, not a peace process, but a mirror of regional fatigue. The truce may hold another week or collapse overnight. For now, diplomacy continues, lives remain in flux, and the narrative, as al-Hayya declared, is once again contested on the world stage.